I want to thank Rick for inviting me to be part of this panel today. It's quite an honor. I bring a different perspective around these issues. Basically, I'm a systems person. I tend to look at very large systems and how they interface and work together or don't work together. And I had the opportunity back in the mid-90s to work with NYPD, Health and Hospital Corporations, the City Department of Mental Health. Obviously, I was representing the Office of Mental Health. As we took a look at the issue of the interface of police and NYPD in particular with emotionally disturbed persons. The first one was a little bit of perspective. Of all the police calls that police respond to, 3% are people who are reported to have mental illness, or 30% will actually be transported. They'll actually either be arrested and arraigned someplace, or they'll be brought to a psychiatric emergency service. So again, the numbers are high, but very high profile. It's pretty universal that the adoption of integrated dual disorder treatment, treating a person who has a mental illness and a substance abuse disorder, treating them by the same staff at the same location at the same time, is universally not present. In most localities I go to, they say, oh yeah, we have one agency that does it. They're really good at that. Well, 50% of people with serious mental illness will have a co-occurring substance abuse disorder. 75% of people with mental illness in the justice system will have a co-occurring substance abuse disorder. So what is the system waiting for? Integrated dual disorder treatment reduces arrests, reduces incarcerations, reduces hospitalizations, psychiatric crisis, and promotes recovery. Yes, it's a little more difficult to do. Clinicians have held to a standard. There's actually fidelity models out there now that they measure to see whether they're actually applying it correctly. Then there's trauma-informed care. We're finding that severe physical reactions by people with mental illness are often driven due to some form of trauma history. So our system has a long ways to go to provide adequate treatment that people actually want to be in and actually benefit from, and that don't walk away and then become a crisis in the community. Some of the things that I learned from the police when we were looking at this interface between police and mental health was the waiting times in the psychiatric emergency rooms. Back then, since the mid-90s, they actually tracked, recorded the forms, and they were on average waiting 8 hours in the psychiatric emergency room. And can you imagine transporting someone who's disturbed at that moment, and then sitting with them for 8 hours in a crowded emergency room? They don't usually give them a separate place to see. Medical clearance. If there's any doubt that the person might have a medical issue going on, police were expected to take them to this health emergency room, get a health clearance, come back to the psychiatric emergency room, and then there's 2 waiting times. And I didn't know this, but some of the hospitals, the health emergency room is not where the psychiatric emergency room is. They're physically separate. So they have to get in the car, drive around the block, go to the other side of the hospital, and go through it all over again. The issue of information sharing. Police often bring people to the psychiatric emergency services and have no idea why the person's back out on the street again, or whether the person got actually the help that they needed. And of course, we have our limits on confidentiality that we say we can't really share with them. Custodial transfer. Police bring somebody in, they're in handcuffs. They're going to see the doctor. The doctor says, take the handcuffs off. I can't really tell. I need to see a couple gestures. Okay, if you take the handcuffs off and things go south, and the person needs to be restrained, who's doing the restraining now? Is it the police, or is it the hospital? I'm using hospital restraints, I'm using handcuffs. And then these are huge, as you can imagine, huge legal issues. Somebody gets hurt in the process of doing this. Signatures. One of the things you see in the 2007 revised NYPD policies and procedures is ask the doctor to sign this form. Usually it's like a transfer form. I brought this guy in, we're giving it to you. And inevitably, in the procedure says, if the doctor won't sign the form, indicated over here that he won't sign the form. And so it's just that lack of, cooperation. And then you should know that although people are pretty focused here on CIT, there are other models. There's also what's called a co-responder model, where you have the police go on site and then either a mobile crisis team or some other mental health person comes. Sometimes police departments develop that capacity internally. They hire actual mental health staff and camp staff. So there are models, and I think the discussion ought to be how can we improve the response of of NYPD to the field and not necessarily dictate a particular model. You should know that CIT is being implemented in very large cities. It's not like that it isn't being done now. Houston, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Philadelphia all doing it. And the reports that I'm getting through the colleagues of mine who actually specialize and follow these efforts is that their efforts around CIT, by the end of it, will not look like CIT. That they're having tremendous difficulties implementing it. In Houston, only 25% of the calls that are identified as having a psychiatric emergency, can they actually get a CIT officer there? The large departments have their own issues. If you use New York City, for example, you have 30,000 police officers. CIT model requires about 25% to be trained as an officer. If you put out 2 classes a week, if you graduate 2 classes a week of officers, and that's a huge training when you think about that. 50 weeks a year, 2 classes, 40 hours of training each. It would take you 2 years to get an adequate number of officers identified, volunteered, trained, and then on the streets. So we're asking a lot. And it's a step. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying I'd like to have us all keep it in perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.